Thanks, Becca. So I'm Mariam, a paralegal here at Feldon, Dunsmore Solicitors, and we'll be introducing ourselves shortly, but I'll run through the event plan first. So firstly, we'll be going through who Feldon Dunsmore is, the kind of matters that we usually work on, and then I'll be talking about some of the advantages of working at a niche law firm. And then Bethan will be going through a day in the life of a solicitor. I'll be running through some of the things I get up to as a paralegal. And then Sophie will be explaining a bit more about the work experience scheme, and we'll have a chance to answer any questions at the end of the session. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. I'm Mariam. I've been a paralegal here at Feldon Dunsmore for around 9 months now. I graduated from Warwick in 2019. I did a straight law degree for 3 years, and I was a recipient of the Multicultural Scholarship Programme. After graduating, I did an internship in China for 2 months. So that was with a niche law firm again, but that was specialising in intellectual property and mergers and acquisitions. After I did my internship, I solo travelled for a month around Asia. And when I returned to Birmingham, I interviewed for my role here at Feldon Dunsmore Solicitors. And yeah, I've been a paralegal here for 9 months now. So I'll hand you over to Sophie, who's going to introduce herself as a solicitor.
Thanks, Mariam. So I'm Sophie Reed, a solicitor here at Feldon Dunsmore Solicitors. As you've heard, I'm also a Warwick graduate, and I was at Warwick between 2013 and 2016. I did the 3-year straight law degree programme when I was at Warwick and went straight into a training contract in September 2016 with Feldon Dunsmore Solicitors. I did the slightly unorthodox route of doing my training contract full-time for 2 years, whilst doing my LPC part-time in the evenings at the University of Law in Birmingham. So I worked 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, doing my training contract, and I did 2 evenings a week at the University of Law in Birmingham. I then qualified as a solicitor in September 2016, and so I've been qualified now nearly 2.5 years. I did all my training at Feldon Dunsmore, so you'll hear about us being a niche commercial property firm. So obviously on a training contract you have to do lots of different seats and gain experience in different areas. I was able to do all of that at Feldon Dunsmore Solicitors through doing seats in residential property, which you'll hear about our plot sales department and our residential team, also through the commercial property element, and doing that encompasses development work, landlord and tenant work, secured lending, etc. I also gained experience in agricultural law, which is one of my interests. And we do contentious and non-contentious work. So although we don't specialise in the contentious work, and generally we do predominantly transactional work, we do enough contentious that I was able to gain experience in that field, and I actually presented my own possession hearing at a court in Northampton, which was enjoyable. So I'll pass you over to Bethan to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Bethan. I too am a solicitor at Feldon Dunsmore. Running with the theme, I'm also a Warwick graduate. I graduated in 2014 after having done a 3-year straight LLB degree. Following my graduation, I then went on to do my legal practice course at the University of Law in Birmingham, like Sophie. I did mine full time for a year before then commencing my training contract after a couple of months paralegaling at a high street multidisciplinary firm in Staffordshire. So I qualified as a solicitor in 2017, seems like an awful long time ago, and I qualified into the commercial property department. During my training contract, I undertook seats in personal injury, in wills and probate, and commercial property, and I decided commercial property was the area that I most enjoyed. So I was lucky enough to qualify into that department. I spent a year working for the same firm post-qualification before moving back to the Warwickshire area, where I started with Feldon Dunsmore as a solicitor just over 2 years ago. So I'll pass you back to Mariam.
Thanks, Bethan. So just a bit more about who we are as a firm. We're a niche commercial property law firm located in Coventry, so around 10 minutes away from the university campus. But we are relocating our offices to Warwick, and that's why it says Warwickshire on the slide. We were established in 2014 by the two current partners of the firm, and we've grown since then into a team of 16 property specialists. 6 of our team are Warwick graduates, so the firm's keen to keep this relationship going as they're committed to training the best lawyers in the West Midlands. As the slide says, we pride ourselves in providing high quality, clear legal advice in a commercial context. So that means we're committed to giving practical solutions that fit our clients' business needs. Day to day, we work on highly complex and valuable deals. And as a firm, we're currently involved in a range of deals worth over £1 billion nationwide. I'd say the size of our team and expertise rivals any commercial property team in the area. And we essentially do the same as a big firm, but as a unit of specialists. And despite the high value of our deals, we still retain the ethos of an inclusive, supportive and very friendly firm. So a bit more about the work that we do. We mostly work on commercial property matters, but we do have some residential property experts in our team. So our expertise includes business premises, so where a client wants to lease, sell, purchase or needs funding for premises, we can act on that. We also work on investment properties, so where a client is looking to purchase property for investment, we can do the due diligence to check that the property would be suitable for those investment purposes. And then the client may want to lease out that property or sell the property, which is where we can help them maximise their value for their investment. We can do this by negotiating the best rents and other terms to suit our clients. We also have some planning experts in our team who can look into the planning history for a client before they acquire a site, and they can also assist with the drafting and reviewing of planning documents once the site is acquired. We also have a lot of developer clients, so they may ask us to act on the plot sales, so we'll draft the contracts for those plot sales, and we also occasionally act on the sale and purchase of residential property. And Bethan will be running through an example shortly on the things that we would get up to on a typical property development project.
Thanks, Mariam. So as Mariam says, we do a lot of sort of discrete jobs, and we do a lot of discrete jobs such as a sale of property or purchase of property, or acting on finance for property, etc. But sometimes our sort of specialism, as Mariam said, is in development, and we can have the opportunity to be involved right from the very start of a project right to the very end, the end goal. So typically, we do a lot of student developments and also sort of standalone apartment and flat buildings with commercial premises underneath. So what is our sort of involvement in a project like that? Well, like I say, we get involved right from the very start in the initial site acquisition. That involves things like reviewing title to the property, carrying out searches, advising the client whether the property would be suitable for the development that they're looking to carry out, and carrying out inquiries with the seller, etc., bringing that to completion. As part of that, alongside and afterwards, we can also provide planning advice. We have some planning specialists in the team. We can also look, as Mariam said, to look at act on the finance side, whether that be obtaining finance to purchase the property itself at the outset, or finance required for the development and the actual build of the project as well. We can also get involved in the construction side of things, so negotiating the build contract with main contractors and any warranties, etc., from subcontractors, and we have a specialist who deals with that side of things. And then once the development is complete, we can then look to act on sales of the individual plots or leases of plots to the end buyers and the end users, and commercial leasing of, say, for example, ground floor units which may have shops on, things like that, and get involved in that. And after we've done all of that work, it may be that our client is looking to then sell the freehold remaining in the property as an investment, and we can get involved on that side of things as well. So we really, in these sort of big deals, which, like I say, we specialise in, we really get involved, stuck in with the client, and we live and breathe the project and see it right through from way back from the acquisition right through to the end. Quite an achievement then when we see the end product. I'll pass you back to Mariam.
Thanks, Bethan. So I'm just going to be running through some of the advantages that I found of working at a smaller niche law firm like Feldon Dunsmore. So I found that the teams are very close-knit. We're not 1 in 100, we're 1 in 16. So everyone feels like they have a place and input on a matter. And I feel like this is especially important as a junior, as you feel you always have a say. And you can also get to know each other much better in a much smaller office. The partners are really approachable. You can ask questions and feedback from the partners, and they're both experts in the field, which is great as you're learning from the best, and which is also really important as for your development as a junior. You're also given a lot of responsibility. For example, we acted for a client who was selling their company, so we were asked to do the property due diligence on almost 60 properties. So myself and another paralegal were working on the due diligence side. And this was really high pressured and we were given a lot of responsibility. But I really enjoyed this because I felt like I learned a lot through the process. You also have the ability to have an input into business decisions. So we often ask for our thoughts on flexible working or marketing on the website. And as I mentioned, because we're 1 in 16, I feel like our opinions really count. I think another advantage of having input into business decisions is that we're kind of molded into partners from an early stage of our career, as you'd have to get involved with marketing and networking when you're a partner. So it's good that we're able to do it as juniors. The firm's also really invested in personal development. They place a lot of importance and appreciate the fact that we're all individuals outside of lawyers. So, for example, I run a food blog, and they're really supportive of that and encourage me to write about my interests outside of law. And I often write about these things on our blog on the website. We're also given a lot of client contact, which is quite unusual. And I don't think you'd be able to do that as a junior in a much bigger firm. And I put lastly as a point that we have the ability to have a more well-rounded experience. And I think that's because we get exposure to such varied and high-value commercial property matters. And that means we can become experts in all aspects of our field, rather than just one area of property law. So I'll hand you guys over to Bethan, who's going to be talking again a bit more about a day in the life of a solicitor at Feldon Dunsmore.
So what do we get up to day to day? Well, no 2 days are ever the same as a solicitor at Feldon Dunsmore. That's one of the reasons really which drew me to the job. It's every day is varied. We deal with such a wide variety of matters within the commercial property umbrella, that you're always dealing with sort of different deals. There's much variety, but there's some tasks which invariably we do on most days. So my day usually starts by reviewing my emails. We do get a lot of emails, anything sort of upwards of 60 emails a day is a sort of minimum, right up to sort of 200, 250 emails. Incredibly few, quite a few to go through. But it's important, obviously, that we're keeping in touch with clients, lawyers on the other side, and internal emails, etc. So my day starts by reviewing those. They may have come in overnight or over the previous weekend if it's a Monday. We're seeing, especially at the moment, sort of in the current circumstances that we are, that work isn't sort of limited for everyone between your typical working day, 9 till 5. People are emailing sort of all around the clock. So after having a look at my emails, I'll take any action points, reply to any as necessary, and diarise to chase anything up, etc. And then after that, perhaps it's maybe time for a conference call. Like I say, during current circumstances where we're all working from home, we're not able to have client meetings in the office or elsewhere. So that sort of transitioned into having Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, really whichever platform suits our clients. And we tend to have those meetings, like I say, with clients, their professional advisors, agents, accountants, lawyers on the other side of the deal, and we can have quite a few people on the same call. So calls can be anything sort of maybe around an hour, maybe more if it's we're talking about something complicated. After that call, then take notes if I need to, and take any action points forward that may have come out of the call. And not only do we have conference calls sort of externally with other people, but at the moment when we're not all working in the same office, it's really important that we have calls regularly with the remainder of the Feldon Dunsmore team. So the way we work on certain jobs is we like to have sub-teams to maximise everyone's sort of specialisms within the firm. So it's important when we are working like in sub-teams like that we're always sort of keeping each other in the loop on certain issues within the same job. So we have a lot of internal Teams calls throughout a day and the week as well, just to keep in touch. It's also a really good opportunity to sort of check in with colleagues during these times, and just to make sure that everyone's doing okay and we can all offer each other support when needed. So after a couple of internal calls, might be time for lunch. We all try to take a little bit of time away from our screens at lunchtime. Again, important now as ever to try and get time outside, or just really away from the screens and away from the four walls that we're confined in. And after lunch, it's usually quite a good time after you've sort of refreshed for a little bit to start some drafting. One of our partners uses quite a good analogy and says that the concentration that is required as a solicitor or as a lawyer is similar to that which is required to thread a needle. Quite intense periods of concentration, which we have to sort of apply to our job throughout the whole working day. But when we're actually drafting documents and we're trying to put into words what our clients' goals are and what their aims of the deal are, that concentration, we really have to step that up. And the period that for that reason, periods of drafting are really intense periods of concentration, and we have to really sort of focus ourselves to make sure that drafting is right and we're obviously achieving what our client wants to achieve. So after we've done that drafting, and maybe I send it out to the other side, wait for their comments on it perhaps, and after that maybe it might be time for maybe a site visit. If we're working on a development project, something which we at Feldon Dunsmore really pride ourselves in is we try and live through sort of the client's interests in the site. And one of the ways we do that is by visiting sites where there's development involved, really getting a feel for how the property is on the ground. It's all very well looking at photographs, say, or title plans or documents, but you really need to be on site, we think, to get a real feel for a property. So we tend to do quite a few site visits as well. After that, well, maybe it's time for a couple of completions. Completion very typically involves checking that we've got signed documents on file, getting final authority from the client to complete a particular deal, liaising with the other side, the lawyer on the other side to actually complete the matter, dating all documents, making sure money is transferred to from certain people and perhaps held in our client account. And then reporting, once completion has taken place, reporting that to all of the relevant parties, which, depending how many people involved, can take some time in itself. And then after that, it's a case of organising the documents that we've just completed, and where necessary, making land registry applications, filing stamp duty returns, that sort of thing, to sort of tie up the post-completion matters. In between all of these things that we do in just a day, throughout the day we're receiving emails and calls from clients, from agents, from accountants, from lawyers on the other side, and you know, we're taking calls, and if we're not available, the clients obviously leave a message and we return the call as soon as we can. We do try as much as we can to be as responsive as we can to clients. It's really important to us that we look after our clients. So at that point, it's probably about the end of our working day, which is 5:30. Occasionally, if business needs require it, we do work extra hours. That is part and parcel of being a lawyer, I'm afraid. And we do that every now and again. And after we've finished our work for the day, we then really try and focus on winding down for the rest of the evening. If we've been obviously concentrating for long periods during the day, especially when it's behind a screen, we think it's really important to then be concentrating on having that wind down time at the end of the day, ready to refresh and start back again the next day. I shall pass you back to Mariam.
Thanks, Bethan. So just in the day of a life as a paralegal at Feldon, Dunsmore, I usually begin my day at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're all working remotely at the moment, so I'd firstly log on, check and action any emails to ascertain if there's anything urgent for the day. As we're all working remotely, we get far more emails than usual. And then I begin by drafting my to-do list for the day. I get work from a range of fee earners in the firm, so I find it's really important that I stay organised to ensure that I meet all my deadlines and that I'm giving the task the attention that it needs by allocating enough time to it. Then by around 10 a.m, hopefully, I'll start drafting or reviewing any contracts or doing a title review. I prefer to do these kind of tasks early on in the day. As Bethan mentioned, this requires a lot of concentration and attention to detail, so I feel like that's when I'm most switched on. And then by 1 p.m. we have our lunch. I try to get out on a walk if the weather's good enough, get some time away from my screen. And then by 2 o'clock I've returned to my computer and I might do something like legal research. This is one of my favourite things to do as a paralegal, as I enjoy learning new things. For example, one of the tasks I was given a few months ago by one of the partners was to look into a restrictive covenant that was on a title for a property that a client wanted to purchase to develop into a supermarket. And once looking into it, I found a competition law order from 2010 which restricted the enforcement of such covenants. So that was really interesting because I studied competition law at university, so it was interesting to see how both areas of law interacted with each other. And then later on in the afternoon, I might be involved in some business development tasks. I mentioned earlier that sometimes I write blogs. So this afternoon, I'll be writing a blog on an invite that I had for my food blog. And I've also recently been appointed work experience coordinator by one of the partners. So I might be reviewing work experience applications. And usually before I leave the office, I might have a meeting with my supervisor, or as I'm working from home, it might be over the phone or over Teams, and that's just to go over any work that I've done over that day or over the past week. And I find that really helpful as I get some feedback on how to improve any of the work that I'm doing. And then throughout the day, I might be given some admin tasks such as drafting invoices or drafting letters to clients. And then I usually finish for the day by 5:30 p.m. and I get to unwind and prepare for the next day. And I'll hand you over to Sophie now, who's going to be explaining a bit more about the work experience scheme and her experience doing work experience at Feldon Dunsmore.
Thank you, Mariam. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a bit first about work experience generally and some of the advantages that has, and also then a bit about my personal experience with work experience at Feldon Dunsmore and the work experience scheme that we have available to students. So work experience generally is really important. I think both legal and non-legal work experience is crucial. I personally, as a student at Warwick, had lots of non-legal work experience, but very limited legal work experience. So I was very aware of that and made a conscious effort to apply for some legal work experience. And I really found that my non-legal experience put me in a very good stead for my legal work experience. And I undertook a week's work experience at Feldon Dunsmore solicitors whilst I was a student. That was actually off the back of a talk from one of the partners who came into Warwick Uni whilst I was there, and he did a similar presentation and invited people to apply, which I did, and off the back of my work experience and an interviewing process, I was offered a training contract at the firm. So certainly not all work experience weeks will pan out that way, but there are so many advantages to getting in a firm, not only for the firm to see you, which is really important and proof that, you know, we've recruited candidates that have come through work experience, but also for your CV and really your personal development. As you've heard lots about Feldon Dunsmore solicitors and what we do and what a day in the life is, a day in the firm doing work experience really gives you that opportunity to see that for yourself, and understand a bit about the work that we do, the culture of a firm, the current, you know, staff, etc. So one thing I was really aware of as a student at Warwick is that you hear lots about the training contract and the opportunities in the Magic Circle firms, and, you know, the vacation scheme structures, etc., that they have available. But I wasn't really aware of the opportunities at firms outside of the city. So there are, you know, hundreds and thousands of firms out there in the country, ranging from everything from your high street law firm who might just practice in wills and probate or family matters. You also get multidisciplinary high street law firms with perhaps one or two partners specialising in lots of different areas, or a couple of different areas. And then obviously you've got your, you know, international Magic Circle law firms that have departments covering every base. But there's so much in between those two extremes that I wasn't particularly aware of, and especially the opportunities that those firms have available. So there are so many advantages which you've heard about, the working in a niche firm and a smaller firm. But really the only way you're going to understand what you enjoy and, you know, what sort of firm is for you is to get into those firms and see. So I did work experience at a London firm, which was very different to my experience at a niche firm. And so there's all those sorts of, you know, firm specific details, but also the work itself. I mean, we've told you lots about the type of work that we do, but again, seeing it firsthand and actually doing some of those tasks, which are very similar to what I do now and Bethan does on a daily basis and Mariam, it's really good to have that hands-on experience doing real tasks and seeing how you enjoy it, whether you think you have the skill set and whether it's something you're interested in. Obviously, the bigger firms with lots of departments, you have that opportunity to do seats in your training contract in lots of different areas. But at a smaller firm, you might not necessarily get the breadth of experience on your training contract, which isn't a problem. You know, actually, I had more experience qualifying at Feldon Dunsmore than I had if I'd have just done a 6-month seat in commercial property. But if you're not interested in commercial property, then certainly you want to find out before you've accepted a training contract. And if you are genuinely interested in that subject, it gives you great experience to put forward at, you know, interviews, applications, etc. I think one thing I found is that firms generally see through you better than you think they can. So if you're not genuinely interested in something, but you're trying to sell yourself that you are, the firm will see through that. So I was genuinely interested in commercial property, and doing the work experience really confirmed that. And so I was delighted to accept a training contract in a firm that specialises in that. But you certainly want to, you know, get as much experience as you can in, like I say, legal and non-legal. All my non-legal work experience definitely helped me out on my work experience with Feldon Dunsmore solicitors, and just being used to being in an office environment, answering the phones, you know, writing letters, all of that's transferable and helps you out. So work experience generally is great. We offer a work experience scheme, and so there's some details on the slide there about the placement that we have available, and lots of firms will have, you know, informal work experience schemes, etc. And I think generally lots of firms are looking to not only give students the experience, but see those candidates, because like us, you know, the best way to train the best lawyers is to train them yourself. So if you can get into a firm, you know, generally those firms have opportunities for progression. So a day's or a week's work experience would be very similar to, you know, what you've heard from Bethan and Mariam. You'd get to see those fee earners in the firm and the support staff and meet everyone. You'd also get to carry out some tasks yourself. So there's tasks, for example, that we set candidates at interview that are similar to the tasks we'd give on work experience. So it's just great experience to be doing those tasks when you've got an opportunity for feedback, and it might put you in good stead later on in, you know, real life job applications. So you might be tasked with drafting a contract, and we'd give you the information and some background information, which again is transferable to any area of law. You know, there aren't many departments in a law firm you can work in without being asked to draft a contract of some description, whether that be a will, you know, or filling in the details in a commercial property purchase contract. You know, it's transferable again. We might ask you to undertake some legal research, which again is transferable to any department, but really gives you a flavour of whether you're interested in commercial property. So in terms of applying, if you would like to be considered for the work experience scheme, then if you can send across a copy of your CV to our info@Feldon Dunsmore email address, which is on the slide and also on our website, so you can take that down. The deadline for applying is the 30th of April this year, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get some candidates in for July, August this year. We had to postpone work experience last year due to current situation, but hopefully we'll be in our Warwick offices by then and be able to have some students in. So I think Mariam's got one more slide, which she's just going to talk to you about what we're looking for generally with a work experience student, but also these are again transferable to life as a solicitor and the sort of values we like to see from the members of the team at Feldon Dunsmore.
Thanks, Sophie. So yeah, generally what we're looking for is a good academic record, which you all have as Warwick students. someone who's a team player, who's not afraid to help their colleagues out, someone who's enthusiastic and proactive, commercially minded, and good communication skills, both oral and written, are all very important. So yeah, if you'd like to ask any questions on the firm or the work experience scheme, just please type them in the chat. One of us will get back to you. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to receiving your applications.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, all of you. That's been really interesting. It's been very insightful to hear about what it is like working for Feldon Dunsmore, and obviously the advantage of being in a niche property firm. And hopefully we're going to have some questions starting to come through from students as well. So just give people a moment or two to pop their questions in the chat.
That's fine.
Okay. Are you able to see the chat?
Yes, I'll just
perfect. Okay, that's fine.
So I think that the first questions come through to say, is the opportunity available to all undergraduate students? So yes, it is. We offer work experience also to students outside of Warwick, but we're very keen to have Warwick students in because they generally, have a skill set that the firm likes. So law and non-law students are very welcome to apply, and I think, again, the firm, like I'm sure many others will say, don't have a preference. If you're a good candidate, then if you've done a non-law degree, that's fine. So the next question, I think, is, will we get to learn more about paralegal work in the week work experience? So yeah, I think a week's work experience is very transferable to the sort of tasks that a paralegal would undertake at the firm. So you'll get to you might get to shadow a solicitor, you might get to shadow Mariam or one of our other paralegals, and you'll really see what sort of work a paralegal does. Which to a certain extent is very similar to what both me and Bethan and the other solicitors and the partners do, but you'll see the sort of type of work that Mariam gets involved in and her role in that. And if hear about any paralegal opportunities that we have or others.
So looking through the questions, another question is, someone is a first year student, can you still apply for work experience? Absolutely. There's, as Sophie said, the importance of work experience. We think, personally, having gone through it, it's really important to get as much experience as you can at different firms if you can, just so that you have an opportunity to see what sort of firm you may like to work at. I undertook, for example, a week's work experience at a London Magic Circle firm, and I hated it. So that I really didn't like the city working environment. So that experience, it was really valuable to me because it adhered to me that really I was looking to work at a non-city firm, but still sort of be doing the similar sort of level of work, but just not in the city. So yeah, whatever stage you are in your degrees, we'd welcome any applications. And I think another question, do you recruit for the work experience on a rolling basis? So as Sophie said, a week's work experience doesn't necessarily automatically follow them that there's a recruitment process after that. But if you and us as a firm, perhaps if we're a good fit, then there is an opportunity for further recruitment, be that as a paralegal or in the long term looking towards a training contract. Like I say, if it's a good fit. And in terms of whether we run work experience year on year, like Sophie said, last year we did obviously have to postpone it because of the COVID situation, but we do try where we can to provide some opportunity for work experience where we can.
Thanks, Bethan. So one of the questions that's come through is, what would your advice be to students in finding niche firms like yourself? So, I mean, I undertook this process when I was at Warwick, and I met with the Warwick Careers Advisor at the time, who was great. And we looked at the sort of firms or the sort of subject areas that I thought I was interested in, and that may be just for the purposes of work experience or to find out if you like them. You know, it helps if you have, you know, lots of people have connections or know of someone at a firm or someone working at a firm who may be able to, you know, give you details about any, you know, work experience schemes those firms have available. Lots of firms have a section on their website about recruitment and who to contact, and we get quite a lot of speculative applications for work experience, for qualified positions, etc. So there's no harm in ever sending a speculative cover letter and CV and sending it to firms tailored obviously to the specific firm, but there's no harm, you know, firms may contact you back off the back of that. I think I really sat down and worked out. I went to lots of the talks when I was at Warwick about different firms and thought about what really interests me. There's quite a few firms local to Warwick because I was keen to try and get some experience whilst I was staying locally. And there's a variety of multidisciplinary firms within, you know, regional firms, smaller high street firms, niche firms like ourselves. I mean, I can think of, you know, lots of firms locally who we work with quite regularly, who there's a firm of niche wills and probate specialists who we work with and cross-refer our clients to. There's high street firms based in Leamington, Coventry. I think about what you're interested in and then just do some research and contact the firms. You can always phone through before sending a cover letter and CV, and utilise any connections that you do have, whether that's other students or, you know, family, friends, anyone you know in positions, and like I say, you know, get experience in legal and non-legal fields because it all helps.
So just to answer the question on whether you send your CV or it's a CV and cover letter, so our requirements are that you just send a CV, but it would look better if you do send a cover letter, and we might prioritise candidates that do. Just explaining how you're a good fit for the firm, what you would gain from work experience, and a bit more about you too, some of your experiences. And the work experience opportunities are open to all undergraduates, including first years.
Thanks, Mariam. I think also in any covering letter, if you're making a specific application to our firm or others, explain why that firm. So if it's because, you know, you do think you might have an interest in commercial property, then explain why. I had a great property mark from my property module on my law degree, so I, you know, mentioned that I think in my covering letter. I'd also been to the talk at Warwick Uni with the partner that presented the talk, so again, that was great, you know, that's something to reference. It's certainly not open to only people that have been on this talk, and like I say, it's not limited to just Warwick students, but the fact that you've listened to the talk and know a bit more about the firm than anyone just reading our website, you know, use that to your advantage.
Just picking up on the question, someone's asked what the differences are between working in, say, a London firm and a firm like Feldon Dunsmore. Well, myself personally, like I mentioned earlier, I did work experience, week's placement at a Magic Circle firm in London. I was living at the time for that week. I was staying with someone outside of sort of zone 1, so it involved a pretty arduous commute into the city, which I didn't particularly enjoy. The work itself, which I committed myself to, and I was doing Similar sort of task as Mariam was explaining earlier, in terms of paralegal type tasks such as legal research and preparing reports. And the work itself was, I found enjoyable in terms of it was legal work. But for me personally, the working environment of that particular firm, even for the week that I was there, I felt like I was a number as opposed to a person. And I didn't have a lot of communication with partners or the people who were supervising me. And that's really why it sort of cemented for me at that stage that I knew I wanted to work at a smaller firm who sort of prides themselves on a bit more of a sort of friendly team environment, which is how I came to be working in the end with Feldon Dunsmore. Another sort of stark difference, I'm sure that many will be sort of an obvious one, are working hours. And the London city firms tend to have a bit of a bad reputation for extremely long working hours. Now, by all means, don't get me wrong, there are definitely occasions at Feldon Dunsmore where, because of a client's needs, we are working beyond outside the normal working day of 9 till 5:30. I won't lie to you and say that everyone always goes home on the dot at 5:30. But when you're working, certainly me personally, when you're working as part of a smaller team and so everyone, there is a much more, I've found, feeling of everyone working together to get a job done. And sort of more camaraderie in a common goal with fewer people, and it sort of just feels a bit more appreciated, that extra work, rather than it becoming sort of the norm and every day you're finishing early hours of the morning. That's certainly not something that we advertise as being something which we commonly do, because we definitely don't.
And I think I'll add to that as well, having I've not obviously worked as a solicitor in a city firm, because I've only worked with Feldon Dunsmore solicitors, but I've got lots of friends in firms, not limited to London, but in bigger firms. And I think one of the differences for me, which may suit different people, but is that in a bigger firm, because you've got so many different departments, you might have a whole, a whole planning department, a whole tax department, obviously you'd have wills and all sorts of different departments. But then generally you become very specialist in a smaller field, which may suit someone perfectly if there's a particular area of law they're very interested in. So, for example, within commercial property, you could be a specialist at landlord and tenant work, you could be a specialist at development work, you could be a specialist at construction. All of that comes under the commercial property umbrella. But I, as a junior lawyer, don't know yet which of those areas I particularly want to be a specialist in. I know what I have interests in, and I really love the development work. I like secured lending work, which I do lots of, and I like, on a personal level, the sort of agricultural side of property work. So I've been, the firm have let me go on courses and are really enthusiastic about me pursuing that agricultural side of property law. But at the moment, I'm not at a stage where I want to be, a specialist on way leave agreements, or a specialist on retail leases, for example. I like the varied approach, and I like the fact that, in any day I'll pick up a whole range of matters, and that suits me. Whereas, like I say, in different firms, if you've got lots of experts, you probably focus on a narrower area, which would suit some individuals and not others. But at this stage in my career, I'm keen to keep it, very broad.
I can see another question. How much time do you spend with clients, COVID permitting? Well, as I said earlier, we pride ourselves in doing quite a lot of site visits, COVID permitting, and we do try and get onto site development sites as often as we can with clients to really get a feel for their project, and that can reveal a whole sort of host of issues that otherwise you may not particularly appreciate by just looking at physical documents. and plans, etc. So we do try and do as much as that as we can. Another opportunity to see clients is perhaps early on in a deal there may be sort of a negotiation sort of meeting when we're negotiating terms, whether that's between sort of other professional advisors, accountants and agents and surveyors, etc. But we may attend those sort of meetings to give sort of the obviously a legal view in those. Another opportunity we see clients is to physically sign documents, to witness documents. So that's another point of contact where they come into the office. I mean, we're not where we're based at the moment. We're on a sort of an industrial estate, so we're not on your typical sort of high street of having clients dropping in every now and again. But our location at the moment is pretty ideal in terms very close to the M6 and the A46. So we're very well located for clients to come to the office if that's required or if they want to. And similarly, we do a lot of travelling to clients' offices or to site, etc. So we do have quite a high level of client contact in person when we can. And if that's not possible for whatever reason, that's, as we mentioned earlier, over the phone or over Teams calls.
And I'll just add to that, generally it's very client specific, what sort of clients like face-to-face meetings and which clients, you know, are happy to deal with everything on the phone and emails, and, you know, even if they live locally, they might choose to request that the documents are emailed to them for printing and signing and dropping in at all sorts of hours, or they might, you know, be the sort of client that really wants a face-to-face meeting to go through all of the documents before they sign. So generally we're guided by client needs. We also have clients based all over the country, so local clients, you know, we might go into their offices and have catch-up meetings with their team and our team. Certainly when we move offices to the Warwickshire offices, we'll invite more clients to our offices. But some clients just don't, in all honesty, like face-to-face meetings and would much rather do it on, you know, Teams or have a phone call. And I wonder if, you know, outside of lockdown, whether lots more clients will do and lots more of the sort of negotiating meetings that traditionally you'd have around the table meeting, and the clients and their lawyers would, you know, sit around a table with you know, any of their professional advisors. I wonder if that, you know, there'll be less of that when you can have, you know, 4 or 5 Teams meetings with clients and professional advisors in a day and no one's got to travel, versus, you know, the sort of more old-fashioned type of face-to-face meetings. But, you know, we'll soon see how that pans out.
How has COVID-19 impacted the firm? It's been a bit of a shake-up, I think, that it's been the same as for everybody, you know, on a lot of different levels. So as with many people, we are working from home. That in itself brings different complications, and we've had to adapt to that, like many other people have as well. So like we mentioned earlier, that involves for us lots of Teams calls, keeping in touch with everyone. It's now not quite as simple as shouting to someone across the office, politely, of course, but it's not that easy to talk to people sort of in situ in the office anymore. And it's about setting aside the time between ourselves to have that Teams call and to check in on everybody via the phone. On another sort of internal level, we as lawyers deal with a lot of physical documents. So you may have seen in the news, and maybe as part of your studies, that whilst a lot of documents can be sort of electronically signed now, there are still some documents which have to be physically signed or witnessed. That's a bit more difficult when everyone's working from home. Things like post as well. We have at the moment one person going into the office, or maximum of 2 people going into the office to check post, to send post out, and that sort of thing. So that's sort of how it's impacted us on a physical sort of internal level. In terms of work, We did have sort of beginning of lockdown last year, there was a bit of a sort of a lull in work as people were a bit unsure about what the immediate future may hold. But we are extremely busy at the moment. Pleased to say that it's picked really back up. Whether people are acquiring property, leasing property, selling property, any sort of churn work which involves the movement of property, we're seeing is really busy at the moment, and development as well, because development, generally speaking, is still going ahead, notwithstanding COVID restrictions. So we're still seeing a lot of our clients who want to get onto site and start construction, and that sort of pushes forward a lot of the acquisition work and the funding work, because of course they need the land to be able to develop, and they need the funding to be able to build as well.
Yeah, I think just again, we're super busy at the moment, and we're actually, as a firm, have actively recruited all through the lockdown. So, which might be surprising to some people, but we've actually just recruited another paralegal, and we recruited 2 senior solicitors mid last year. So we're, you know, as busy as ever and still actively recruiting and growing. So it hasn't impacted us in that sense, other than the, you know, physical obstacles like Bethan mentioned. I'm actually working from home in Surrey, so I'm not even physically local to the office, so I haven't been in at all since mid-December, and I was only sort of back in the office on a rota for a month between the lockdowns. So by the time we get to sort of mid-March, I'll have spent a vast amount of time away from the office and a very minute amount of time in the office when we eventually get back.
I appreciate we have gone over the time a little bit. Are you okay to answer the last 2 questions from Georgia and Kanza, or do you have meetings and things that you also need to go off to do?
That's all right, we can give some quick responses. So will the work experience be virtual or in person?
Thank you.
In person. So provided, you know, COVID permitted, we'll be in the new offices, and very much hoping we can do it in person. And what was the other question?
I think it was, have you or does the firm have any experience representing in court, and is there a specific case that you found most interesting? Me personally, I had some experience when I was in when I did my personal injury seat at my previous firm during my training contract, and I firmly decided representing in court wasn't something for me. So that tells you how much I enjoyed it. As a firm, we don't tend to get involved in contentious proceedings to the point that they get to court. We do have very close relationships with other firms that can sort of take that forward. And I say pride ourselves in having that sort of relationship with other firms. And obviously Sophie mentioned earlier that she did have a very enjoyable experience in some possession hearing.
Yes, I mean, I did some contentious work whilst on my training contract, which was enough for me to decide that it wasn't for me. So it's not something that I've missed out on. But generally, no, we don't take contentious matters forward, other than, you know, advising clients, and then ultimately, if it's going to end up in court, then we'd refer the client on to firms we work closely with, who would be able to take that forward to court. So no, we don't specialise in contentious matters. I think that's all the questions, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions. We've had loads of questions, so everyone's clearly very much enjoyed the talk today. So massive thank you again to both, all 3 of you, Mariam, Sophie and Bethan, for giving up your time, and hopefully a lot of you have enjoyed the session and will be considering applying for the work experience programme. So we'll end the session there, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank
And
you, Becca.
Thanks, Becca.
that's all right. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you.